Have you ever wondered why your eyes snap open at 3 in the morning, as if someone whispered your name from a place you cannot see? Before we begin, let me ask you for something simple. If you want more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It helps you stay connected as we explore these deeper layers of the human mind. Now, let's begin. Waking up at 3 a.m. may feel like a random disturbance, but I want you to set aside the idea of coincidence for a moment. There is a reason so many people around the world wake up at this precise time, a reason that goes far beyond digestion, stress, or an overactive mind. What pulls you from sleep at this hour is not chaos, it is communication. It is your own unconscious reaching out when the noise of the day finally falls silent. My name is Carl Gustav Jung, and for more than 6 decades, I dedicated my life to understanding the hidden architecture of the human psyche. I spent years listening to the dreams, fears, symbols, and silent pain of thousands of people. And after all that time, one truth became inescapable. The unconscious speaks most clearly when the ego is quiet, and nothing quiets the ego like the deep hours of the night. At 3 a.m., the barrier between your conscious mind and your inner world becomes thin, so thin that thoughts, memories, emotions, and symbols, long buried beneath your daily routines, begin to rise. This hour is not just late, it is a threshold, a crossing point, a moment where you stand between two worlds, the world you show to others and the world that quietly shapes everything you are. Freud, my mentor and early companion, believed dreams were merely repressed desires pushing to break through. But I discovered something far larger and far more profound. Beyond your personal memories and experiences, beyond the stories you consciously tell yourself, there is a deeper layer of the psyche, the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of ancient symbols, instincts, and patterns that all humans share. At night, particularly around 3 a.m., this deeper layer begins to stir. People often ask me throughout my career, "Doctor, Jung, why do I wake up at the same time every night? Why 3 a.m., why always that hour?" My answer was always the same, because something within you is trying to be heard. Something you've ignored, avoided, dismissed, or forgotten is gently, sometimes urgently, trying to come into the light. Your unconscious is not your enemy. It is not a dark pit of primitive impulses waiting to sabotage your life. It is instead the missing piece of who you are, the part of you that wants wholeness, not chaos. And when you refuse to listen during the day, when your life becomes a blur of distractions, obligations, screens, noise, your unconscious waits for the only moment when your defenses finally drop, the middle of the night. Your heartbeat quickens, your breath feels shallow, your mind wakes before your body does, not because you are broken, but because you are being called. To understand this calling, you must first understand the central task of psychological development, the process I named individuation. Individuation is the journey of becoming whole, of bringing together all the fragments of your inner world, of integrating the forgotten, the repressed, the rejected, and the unseen aspects of yourself. Most people spend their lives identifying only with their conscious ego, the me they know. But the ego is just the small island floating on a vast ocean. The ocean is your unconscious, and the tides rise around 3 a.m. In that moment, your inner world steps closer. Parts of you that have waited years, sometimes decades, to be acknowledged, find a crack in the silence. This is why waking up at this hour feels so different from waking up at other times. It feels charged, it feels significant, it feels like something is happening, even if you cannot name it yet. Across many cultures, this hour has been considered sacred. In Christianity, it is the hour of divine mercy. In Eastern traditions, it is the hour when vital energy moves through the lungs, linked to grief and release. In shamanic practices, it is the hour when the veil between worlds becomes thin. Is it a spiritual moment, a psychological moment, a biological moment? It is all of them at once. Because the psyche does not separate spirit from matter, emotion from body, symbol from reality. At 3 a.m., all these dimensions, physical, emotional, and spiritual, intersect. And in that intersection, your unconscious whispers, "Look at what you have forgotten. Look at what you have avoided. Look at what you are ready to understand." This is where our journey begins, And from here, without breaking the flow, we will move naturally into the next chapter, the one that reveals what exactly is trying to speak to you at this sacred hour. As we step through that threshold of the early morning hour, there is something important you need to understand, something that explains why waking up at 3 a.m. can feel unsettling, heavy, or emotionally charged. What calls you at this hour is not random, it is not meaningless, it is not simply the body pulling you out of sleep. What rises in those moments is what I call the shadow. The shadow is not a monster lurking inside you. It is not evil. It is not dangerous. It is simply the collection of parts of yourself that you have pushed out of sight. Parts you felt were too much, not acceptable, too painful, or inconvenient to acknowledge. And because these parts live outside the light of your awareness, they often speak in whispers, symbols, emotions, or sudden awakenings. The shadow is everything you once were but learned to hide, everything you needed but were told to deny, everything you felt but were never allowed to express, everything you feared and tried to forget. And at 3 a.m., when your defenses are low and your ego is tired, the shadow sees an opening. That is why waking up at this hour can feel like being pulled into a conversation you did not plan to have. You may feel restless, anxious, confused, or strangely emotional. You might notice memories rising, thoughts that do not normally appear, or a sense of presence, as if something inside you is asking for your attention. It is. Throughout my years of working with patients, I saw this pattern repeat over and over again. People would come to me frustrated, exhausted, even frightened, because they kept waking up at the same time each night. But when we began to explore what was happening in their inner world, something remarkable emerged. The 3 a.m. awakening was their shadow knocking on the door. Let me tell you the story of a man I once treated, a respected businessman, admired by many, someone who looked powerful and successful on the outside. He came to me because he could no longer bear the anxiety that woke him every night at 3 a.m. His heart raced, his breath tightened, and his mind filled with worst-case scenarios. He believed he was losing control. What he did not know was that his shadow had been waiting decades to speak. During our sessions, I asked him not to fight the awakenings, but to stay present with them, to listen, to observe, to let the images and emotions rise instead of pushing them away. And slowly, something surfaced. He began to see visions of a lonely, frightened little boy crying in a dark room. At first, he dismissed these images. "They're just dreams," he said. "Nothing important." But the boy returned night after night, always at the same hour. With gentle guidance, he finally allowed himself to approach the boy in his imagination, and that's when the truth revealed itself. The child was him, his own younger self, abandoned emotionally after his father left the family. A part of him that had never healed, a part of him that had never been acknowledged, a part of him that had been shoved into the shadow so he could survive, grow, and appear strong. But the shadow does not go away just because you deny it. It waits. And it often waits for 3 a.m. when you can no longer distract yourself with work, schedules, conversations, or screens. When the world is quiet enough for you to finally hear what you've been running from. This is the uncomfortable truth. What wakes you at 3 a.m. is usually the part of you that has been silenced the longest. It is the grief you never cried, the anger you swallowed because you feared losing love, the fear you hid behind jokes or ambition, the vulnerability you covered with success, the softness you learned to treat as weakness, the dreams you abandoned because life demanded something else. Your shadow is not trying to torment you. It is trying to return home. When you wake up at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding, you are not being punished, you are being contacted. Your psyche is saying, "Please stop ignoring me. Please look at what hurts. Please acknowledge what I am expressing. Please remember who you are." If you do not listen, the shadow becomes louder. It pushes through your body in the form of anxiety. It hijacks your thoughts with obsessive worries. It appears in your relationships through anger or withdrawal. It shapes your choices without your awareness. But when you do look at it, gently, compassionately, patiently, everything changes. What once felt terrifying begins to soften. What once felt overwhelming begins to make sense. And what once felt like an enemy becomes a guide. The shadow is not your darkness. It is your depth. It is your truth. It is your unclaimed power. And the moment you begin to see it, truly see it, the entire experience of waking up at 3 a.m. shifts. It becomes less like a panic and more like an invitation, an opening, a doorway into the parts of yourself that are ready to be healed. Now that we've uncovered the presence of the shadow, we can move smoothly into the next layer of this mystery. Why the hour of 3 a.m. is so uniquely powerful, and why so many cultures across history describe it as a sacred moment. Once you recognize that the shadow is calling you, another question naturally arises. Why does it choose this hour? Why not midnight or 1 a.m. or dawn? Why do so many people around the world wake up specifically around 3 a.m.? To answer that, we must look at something far deeper than sleep cycles or biology alone. We must explore what I call the liminal hour, the period when the world stands between darkness and the first hint of light, when the boundaries between your inner and outer worlds soften and the psyche becomes unusually open. In every culture, in every time period, the hours between 3 and 4 a.m. have carried a profound sense of mystery. It is as if humanity, across continents and centuries, instinctively recognized that something changes in the atmosphere during this time, something quiet, invisible, and yet unmistakably powerful. Across spiritual traditions, 3 a.m. is not just a moment on the clock, it is a doorway. Let's begin with what happens internally. During the day, your consciousness is focused outward, on conversation, responsibility, planning, reacting, surviving. Even when you try to turn inward, there are layers of noise and defense standing between you and your deeper self. The ego works tirelessly to maintain control. But at 3 a.m., the ego is weak. Your rational mind has loosened its grip, your body is still, the world is silent, and the unconscious rises like a tide. This is why emotions feel bigger at 3 a.m., thoughts feel sharper, memories feel alive, symbols feel meaningful. You feel exposed, not because something outside is threatening you, but because something inside is finally visible. This liminal hour is the meeting point between two worlds, your conscious identity and your vast inner landscape. It is the psychological equivalent of standing in a doorway, 1 foot in the known, 1 foot in the unknown. But the significance of this hour goes beyond psychology. There is also a symbolic, spiritual, and mythological dimension that cultures have recognized for thousands of years. In Christianity, 3 a.m. is traditionally connected with the hour of divine mercy, a moment when heaven and earth are said to draw closer. It mirrors the hour when, according to Scripture, the veil of the temple was torn, a symbol of separation dissolving. In Eastern traditions, particularly in Chinese medicine, 3 a.m. is when energy flows through the lung meridian, the organ associated with grief, release, and emotional cleansing. It is a moment when the body naturally lets go of what it can no longer carry. In shamanic cultures, this hour is the moment when the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world becomes thin enough for messages, visions, and intuitive guidance to pass through with clarity. Different traditions, different languages, different symbols, yet all pointing to the same truth. 3 a.m. is a threshold between worlds. This is not superstition. It is a recognition of something the psyche already knows. You feel it when you're awake at that hour. The world feels suspended. Reality feels softer. Time feels fluid. And inside, something stirs. Psychologically, we might say that the unconscious finds it easier to rise here. Spiritually, we might say that the soul speaks more clearly. Symbolically, we might say that this hour represents death and rebirth, the dark moment before the light returns. And that symbolism matters. In many mythologies, the hero reaches their breaking point just before dawn, the moment when everything seems lost, before transformation occurs. In alchemy, this stage is called nigredo, the blackening, the dissolution of old identity, the painful descent into the unknown. It is only from this darkness that new life can emerge. And 3 a.m. embodies this moment perfectly. It is the psychological midnight of the soul, the point where your deepest wounds rise not to harm you, but to be healed. When you wake up at this hour, you are standing in the symbolic space where opposites meet, light and darkness, ego and unconscious, fear and wisdom, death and rebirth. This meeting creates tension, and that tension produces energy, the energy that fuels transformation. I called this phenomenon the transcendent function, the inner ability of the psyche to reconcile opposites and create something new from the conflict between them. The transcendent function is most active at 3 a.m. because this is the moment when your inner polarities are closest. Your consciousness is not fully asleep, nor fully awake. The unconscious is not fully hidden, nor fully revealed. You are suspended between worlds, and in that suspension, insight becomes possible. So when you wake up at this hour, you are not broken. You are not malfunctioning. You are not being punished. You are standing in the doorway of transformation. And now that we understand why this hour is so powerful, we can move deeper into the role it plays in shaping your external reality, specifically through one of the most mysterious and profound forces of the psyche, synchronicity. Standing in that liminal doorway between night and dawn, it becomes natural to ask another question. If the unconscious becomes active at 3 a.m., does the outer world respond to it too? The answer is yes, more often and more precisely than most people realize. When the boundary between your conscious and unconscious minds softens at 3 a.m., something else softens as well. The perceived separation between your inner world and the reality around you. This is where one of the most fascinating phenomena of the psyche begins to reveal itself: synchronicity. Synchronicity is not coincidence. It is not luck. It is not randomness. It is meaning appearing in the fabric of events. It is the moment when the world seems to speak your language, when something you feel internally appears externally, with uncanny precision. Many people notice this naturally. They wake at 3 a.m. thinking of someone they haven't spoken to in years, and that same day that person calls. They wake with a vivid image in their mind, and later see that exact image in a book, a conversation, or a stranger's tattoo. They wake with an unexplainable heaviness in the chest, and hours later receive news that resonates with that emotion. The pattern is too consistent, too symbolic, too intelligent to dismiss as chance. To understand why this happens, imagine your psyche as a deep ocean. Most of your daily consciousness lives at the surface, where waves are easily disturbed by routine life. But at 3 a.m., you are pulled into deeper waters, where the tides of the unconscious move in harmony with something far larger than your individual mind. Synchronicities occur when these deep inner tides align with events in the outer world, when meaning bridges the divide between psyche and reality. Let me share one of the most powerful examples from my clinical practice. It involves a patient whose strict rationalism made her dismiss everything symbolic or intuitive. During one of our sessions, she told me of a dream in which she received a golden scarab, a symbol of transformation and rebirth in ancient Egypt. She insisted it meant nothing, that it was simply a product of her imagination. At that exact moment, we heard a soft tapping on the window. Tst, tst, tst. I opened it, and a beetle flew into the room, a species that in our region most closely resembled the golden scarab of her dream. I caught it and placed it gently in her hand. Her eyes widened, her defenses cracked, and she whispered, "This is impossible." But it wasn't impossible. It was meaningful. It was synchronistic. That moment changed her life, and, I will admit, reaffirmed something crucial for me as well. When the unconscious speaks, the world often answers. Synchronicity reveals something profound about waking up at 3 a.m. This hour does not just open the door to your inner world, it opens the door between worlds. Your thoughts, emotions, and symbols are more fluid. Your intuition is sharper. You are closer to the source of meaning. When you wake at this hour, you are more likely to notice patterns, symbols, and signs that mirror your inner state. You may notice repeated numbers, images appearing in dreams and then in waking life, people contacting you in meaningful moments, books falling open to the right page, words or phrases repeating unexpectedly, objects breaking or appearing symbolically, sudden alignment of events. This heightened state is not magical thinking. It is psychological attunement. Your mind is no longer closed inside itself. It becomes transparent, porous, receptive. You are not imagining connections. You are perceiving them. Synchronicity is the language of the unconscious made visible. It is how the deeper intelligence of your psyche creates bridges to guide you toward integration, healing, and awareness. Many people think the unconscious speaks only in dreams, but in truth it speaks in events, encounters, symbols, and timing. This is why your 3 a.m. awakenings often seem to coincide with sudden shifts in your life, unexpected news, inner revelations, or vivid dreams that carry messages you cannot ignore. The more you listen, the more synchronicities appear. The more you resist, the more they intensify. The more you open, the more they guide. Synchronicity is not something you create. It is something you notice, something that reveals itself when your ego is quiet enough to receive it. And now that you understand how the outer world responds to the inner world, we can move to the next essential piece of this puzzle, the physical and psychological roots of your nightly awakening, and why both are inseparable. Because to decode the 3 a.m. phenomenon fully, we must understand the unity between body and soul. After understanding how your inner world can echo into your outer reality through synchronicity, another question naturally arises. What about the physical reasons for waking up at 3 a.m.? Is it all psychological, all spiritual, or is something happening in the body as well? The truth is far more interesting and far more important than choosing one explanation over another. Your awakening is not the result of either physical or psychological causes. It is almost always the result of both. The body and the psyche are not separate systems. They are two expressions of the same underlying reality. This is what I called the unus mundus, the one world, where mind and matter are different faces of a single structure. So when you wake at 3 a.m., your body may be participating in the conversation just as much as your unconscious. Let's begin with the body. At this hour, several physiological processes reach key turning points. Around 3 a.m., your cortisol, the hormone related to stress and wakefulness, begins to rise in preparation for morning. Your body also shifts through important phases of temperature regulation, digestion, and blood sugar balancing. For some people, these physical cycles alone are enough to cause a sudden awakening. Perhaps you went to bed stressed. Perhaps you ate too late. Perhaps your room is too warm or too cold. Perhaps your breathing was shallow or disrupted. The body is always responding to what you lived during the day, but here is where the deeper truth emerges. The physical trigger is often connected to a psychological message. If you overeat at night, for example, the question is not simply, what did I eat? It might be, what was I avoiding feeling? If your heart races at 3 a.m., the question is not only, is my adrenaline rising? It might be, what emotion did I swallow today that my body is now expressing for me? If your cortisol spikes, the issue is not only biological stress. It might be, what part of my life is out of alignment? The body carries the emotional burdens the ego refuses to acknowledge. This is why people often develop stomach aches when anxious, chest tightness when grieving, or insomnia during moments of emotional conflict. The body speaks when the mind refuses to listen. Your 3 a.m. awakening may begin in the body, but it rarely ends there. To understand this unity even more clearly, consider how different hours of the night mirror different psychological states. This is not myth. It is a pattern I observed repeatedly through decades of analytical work. Between 9 and 10 p.m. You often wake because the day has not released you. Thoughts are unfinished, feelings unresolved. The conscious mind is still too active. Between 10 p.m. and midnight, your body is doing deep repair work. If you wake, something physical or emotional is demanding attention. Tension, inflammation, old pain, or a deep internal shift. Between midnight and 1 a.m., you stand at a symbolic gateway between yesterday and tomorrow. Questions about purpose, direction, and authenticity rise to the surface. Between 1 and 2 a.m., you enter the darkest psychological territory, the realm where the shadow is most active. Old wounds and buried emotions come alive. Between 2 and 3 a.m., the psyche prepares for release. Something is being purified. Old patterns, outdated beliefs, emotional toxins. But between 3 and 4 a.m., you reach the hour of truth. The hour of awakening, the hour of the self. This is the moment when your unconscious, your emotions, your body, and the larger forces of meaning converge. That convergence can shake you awake, not as a threat, but as an invitation. Think of your 3 a.m. awakening like a messenger knocking on the door. Sometimes the message is physical. Hydrate, rest, breathe, slow down. Sometimes it is emotional. Feel this, acknowledge this, stop hiding this. Sometimes it is psychological. It's time to confront this, it's time to understand, it's time to grow. Sometimes it is spiritual. You are being guided, you are being strengthened, you are being called. And sometimes it is all of these at once. I have watched countless patients heal parts of their bodies simply by listening to the emotional truth behind their symptoms. I have watched insomnia ease when a person confronted a repressed grief. I have seen anxiety dissolve when a long-ignored inner need was finally acknowledged. The body is not your enemy, it is your messenger. The 3 a.m. awakening is not a malfunction, it is communication. When you begin to treat it as such, with curiosity instead of fear, with openness instead of resistance, you enter a new relationship with yourself. You no longer feel hunted by your awakenings, you begin to feel guided by them. And now that we understand how the body and psyche intertwine to create this powerful moment, we can move to the final and most practical part of this journey. What to actually do when you wake up at 3 a.m. and how to use that moment to accelerate your individuation and inner transformation. Now that you understand the psychological, symbolic and physical roots of your 3 a.m. awakening, we arrive at the most important question of all. What should you actually do when it happens? How do you turn this experience from anxiety into awareness, from restlessness into revelation, from disturbance into depth? The first step is simple but essential. Shift your attitude. Most people wake at 3 a.m. and immediately panic. Oh no, not again, I need to sleep. Tomorrow will be terrible. This resistance tightens the body, agitates the mind, and blocks the very message the psyche is trying to deliver. Instead of fighting the awakening, try something radically different. Welcome it. Say to yourself quietly, I'm awake for a reason. Let me see what this moment wants to show me. This alone changes everything. You are no longer a victim of the moment. You are a participant in it. Now let us walk through what to do next. 1. Sit up gently. Don't turn on bright lights. Don't escape the moment. Your goal is to remain in that soft, liminal space between sleep and wakefulness. Bright lights activate your rational mind and break the connection with the unconscious. Instead, sit softly in your bed or move to a quiet corner of your room with a dim light or candle. The intention is not to wake up fully, but to become aware. You are listening with your entire being, your emotions, your intuition, your breath. 2. Breathe slowly and observe what is present. Don't try to fix anything. Don't analyze yet. Don't force answers. Notice what your body is feeling. Notice what emotion is rising. Notice what thoughts are appearing. Are you anxious? Are you sad? Are you remembering something? Is there a particular person on your mind? Do you feel heavy in the chest, tight in the stomach, restless in the hands? These are not random sensations. They are messages. 3. Begin the practice of active imagination. This is one of the most powerful tools I ever developed in psychology, the bridge between your conscious mind and your unconscious. Here is how to do it. Close your eyes. Allow images, feelings, or symbols to arise without forcing them. Whatever appears, welcome it. It might be a childhood memory, a face, a place, a color, an animal, a voice, or simply an emotion. Don't judge it. Don't push it away. Engage with it gently. If an image appears, ask it, what do you need? What are you trying to show me? What have I ignored about you? And then wait. You will feel or hear a response, not necessarily as words, but as impressions, sensations, or inner knowing. This is not fantasy. This is dialogue between your ego and your deeper self. 4. If no image arises, bring your most important question to mind. Every person carries a question that quietly shapes their days. Should I leave this relationship? Should I change my job? Why am I feeling lost? What is my purpose? What do I truly want? What wound do I need to heal? Bring your question gently into your awareness, not to solve it intellectually, but to offer it to the unconscious. Then release it and watch what emerges. Often an unexpected insight comes, simple, quiet, and unmistakably true. 5. Write everything down immediately. Keep a notebook beside your bed specifically for your 3 a.m. awakenings. Once your active imagination session feels complete, write what you saw, felt, remembered, or understood. Don't try to sound poetic or coherent. The purpose is not beauty, it is preservation, because insights from the unconscious disappear quickly if not captured. What feels vivid at night often dissolves by morning unless written down. Over time, these notes will reveal patterns, symbols, themes, and guidance that your waking mind would never notice on its own. 6. If you can sleep afterward, do so. If not, honor the moment. Some nights you'll feel peaceful and ready to return to sleep. Other nights, the experience will leave you energized, emotional, or contemplative. Do not force sleep. Instead, begin your day quietly. Read, stretch, meditate, breathe fresh air. If this hour is a spiritual doorway for you, don't slam it shut. 7. Pay attention to synchronicities in the following days. This step is crucial. After a 3 a.m. awakening, the outer world often begins to echo what the inner world revealed. You might notice a phrase someone repeats, images that match what you saw, unexpected messages, dreams with similar themes, people reappearing, events unfolding symbolically. These are not accidents, they are confirmations that you listened. 8. Seek support if the journey becomes overwhelming. Individuation is not meant to be done alone. Speak with a therapist trained in depth psychology if the material becomes difficult, heavy, or confusing. Inner work is powerful, but it is also delicate. 9. Above all, remember the purpose of this practice: transformation. This is not about collecting mystical experiences. It is not about decoding signs for entertainment. It is not about dramatizing your inner life. The purpose is integration, growth, healing, wholeness. Your 3 a.m. awakenings are the unconscious reaching toward you, asking for partnership. And when you respond with awareness, courage, and humility, you step into the deepest journey a human being can take, the journey toward becoming who you truly are. The night is not your enemy. The awakening is not a curse. The darkness is not a threat. It is an invitation. And if you accept it, your life will never unfold in the same way again.